And again, first principles is first principles. They are going back to the drawing board. And when I speak about the GTM first principles, it's for sure is not complicated, right? Uh, Whenever, and I'll come to that definition a little later, but this should be your mantra in life for almost everything, right? Uh, no, this is not created by ChatGPT's rhyming thing. Uh, when in trouble, run to the first principle. This is what I made up when I and my daughter were talking about it. As shitty as it sounds, but this is exactly what it needs to be. In most of the cases, I think even when our sales were dipping and we were not trying to figure out where things are wrong, the first thing that we did is took the entire funnel and went threadbare into it on the GTM side of things. When our product had certain issues, when we did not know it, we took it to, there are sessions which happen on product teardown. And we ruthlessly had other peers, other founders of good startups, money-making startups, especially the ones who were in products, actually roast us big time on every single feature of the product. And that helped us a lot. But what it helped us was to go back to the first principles as to why things are broken, right? With that, a very simple definition of what GTM is, right? And like I say, all of you guys already have enough and more experience. So this is not coming in as a surprise. This is not a new course. This is not rocket science. But it's good to have a very simplistic definition of what this whole thing is about, right? GTM and marketing I sometimes treat it separately. They are sometimes treated together. They are sometimes inseparable. Completely depends on how the company drives it. And we'll come to the scenarios in which how it happens, etc. But at the end of it, this is your way to bring your product or a service to the market. Extremely simple, nothing more, nothing less. Right? And that's the first principle. So which means that whenever that you're coming back to it, this is what you'll come back to, right? But what are those core ingredients? And again, I'm not talking about frameworks, even though it is one, which is people, process, technology. It's very well-known framework, nothing new to it, but also customers. And it always and always and always will boil down to all this. Now, if you don't solve, say, for example, we usually say, great product, hey, it can translate my voice into Japanese in 3 seconds, no latency, an AI-driven LLM. It also translates, transcribes, and also puts it into in video. And here you have a great video, right? All that is great. That's technology. But what if the sales guy that you're selling, who's selling, is not incentivized to sell it the way you want it? Say, for example, if your ACV is low and you are only selling 1-year contracts, but then you can only be profitable if the customers stay with you for 5 years or more, right? Slowly understand this. I'm talking about CAC versus LTV. Your ACV, which is the annual contract, the money that you make from selling a license, is only, in our case, was say 7,500 rupees when we started numbers, right? So, but my cost of acquisition was 21,000 rupees for whatever shitty reasons, right? Which means that that guy has to be there for 3-4 years, at least 5 years, till he or she becomes profitable. That business becomes profitable for me, which means that if the CAC is low, right, and if the customers churn fast, then all hell breaks loose. Ultimately, you will go down the drain.
Okay, I found this on the
I'm
web
sorry.
for which is the
Just one sec. Somehow Siri.
from selling a
Hey
license.
Siri,
It's
stop.
only in a case was say 7,500 rupees.
Oh dear.
When
I don't know why it started. And it also showing me some translate. See, I'm still figuring out this AI business. Okay. You're able to see my screen, right? Okay. So what I was saying was that 21,000 in ACV. Now, if the sales guy is incentivized to sell 1-year contract, then your chances, which means that your renewal has to be super strong, because then you want them to be retained for the next 5 years, which means an incentive is actually breaking the camel's back. So now if they are incentivized more for 3 years, as compared to 1 year, they'll be incentivized to sell more. Now, it's just one example to show how, now this is people, right? The other thing can be if they're not trained well. If you're just putting people in, say, sell, 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 hustle, 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 and they are doing all sorts of stuff just to make ends meet. Good or bad, Byju's is one of those examples, right? Where did things go wrong? We don't know that yet, right? But I'm not saying that they did not have a great product or a value proposition, but certain things went awry, right? This is where people stuff comes in. And if people are demotivated and so on and so forth. Again, some of those things that are part of the first principles, basics that you go back to, one of these 3, 4, 5 things. Are you solving for the customer? Are you meeting your promise and so on? But that's what GTM is all about. Now, why do we need all of this, right? We know all of this, right? There is now the way GTM is defined, or let me just come back to it a little later. Why do we need it? Remember, the objective of clearly laying down the foundations of a GTM process is, remember that we are trying to put something out into the market, right? We are trying to anticipate as many things as possible that can go nicely, or they can go southwards, which means we are trying to anticipate a trajectory which is good or bad. And that is where a laid out principle of GTM and the KPIs you measure, etc., is critical. So obviously it's needed for growth. Growth where? Which segments would you choose? What markets will you get into? Is that market growing or not growing? The Tom, Som, etc., serviceable market, etc., that we speak of, right? The concepts are good, and they're not just for VCs, but you should be convinced also about it that, hey, this is a growing market, even though, or it might be you are a category creator. Then you don't know whether the market exists or not, or you don't know if the customers are going to pay you the way you're wanting it. But at least you have a plan that you're chasing after, which you keep course correct, right? What is your competitive advantage, right? How is it articulated? And are we able to retain somebody beyond their ideal period, right? How can you decrease risk? And it's really important to figure out where your failure points are going to be and act on it. Let's say, why am I losing the leads, right? And that's a huge risk. Why are my partners not paying me the money that they're supposed to pay? Why are the partners not enabled enough to go and sell? Is there something wrong? So you are trying to build some of those scenarios. And when we create that plan, we will go through this and we will do this exercise per force to say, if it is partner-led, then all our efforts have to get into building that partnership and building the partner resources and so on. But then the idea is of a plan is to bake all of this in so that we can de-risk. What is important is GTM doesn't live alone, right? At the end of the day, I mean, the classic fight between a marketing guy and a sales guy, or a sales guy and a product guy. I mean, sales guy typically will say, leads nahi aa rahe, everything is dry. These marketing guys are sitting on their, or twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing, or all the leads are bad. They have met their quota, not mine. And I'm not able to convert because the product features with the customers, what they're asking, and we are not able to provide. On and on and on it goes. Doesn't matter which product. It's not, none of it is SaaS versus non-SaaS. It's applicable across, it's universally true, right? But alignment is what drives GTM. And hence, when you're creating your GTM plan, which type of cross-functional needs that you have so that you can call out. Say, for example, if you need marketing, let's say if you have a long sales cycle, you can't, after a demo till the time that money comes into the bank, you can't just be following the customer, sir, are you free? Can I come and meet up with you? You don't want to become a Bajaj Finserv all over again, sir, loan lena hai kya? I'm assuming that all of you guys understand Hindi, right? I don't want to switch or do whatever. I can do Tamil also if you want. Yeah, but I know, I guess you guys will not. Okay, so in any case, the idea is that dependencies are important. How do we get those clearly spelled out are important. CS is customer success or customer support, call it whatever, it's post-sale. So your GTM plan will be looked into by others also, and it's equally critical, right? And the final thing is critically important is manage resources. Like 22,000 with a 7,500 thing doesn't make sense. It was bad. And in that sense, operationally, you can see why we had to pivot. It doesn't matter how many customers you acquire. You are swimming in a boat or sailing in a boat with a huge hole there. It is going to sink at some point in time. But what are the reasons for those inefficiencies? That is what you have to figure out. And we knew where we were going wrong, right? By the way, SMB market has been a grave for a whole lot of startups. I'm talking about India and India alone, right? We were very, very India specific till the time we got acquired by Chari. Uh, it's a very tough segment to crack, but then we had chosen it. Nobody put a gun to our head saying, "Ye tumko SMBs ko hi bechna." That was not there. But here we were, knight in shining armor. We said that, yeah, we will crack this code. Never before make a boatload of money. Didn't exactly work out, right? But the important thing is knowing the resources which are needed as much as possible. Think about it, the email that you send out. How many of you are actually calculating the cost of an email that gets sent out? Think about that. If a lead is lost, what's the cost of that loss? Now, till that, so an MQL, you sent out a campaign, somebody clicked on it, filled up a form, and then did a demo, whether they did a demo on their own or otherwise. It did not happen in thin air. It cost money. Somebody took a call, you paid their salary already, and then now that lead is lost. Okay, so there is a cost to it. It progressed further, became an opportunity or a deal, and we'll come to all of it, which means now it is sales qualification has also happened, and then we lose it. The proportion or the loss, the volume of that loss, the dollar value of that loss is constantly increasing, right? These large customers cost us, a win was for us roughly about 3.5 lakh rupees, right? Which means that if I lose somebody at that stage, imagine the amount of bottom line hit that we take with one loss. And if your conversion is 4%, 5%, think about the loss already. But then this should not be a construct or an Excel sheet. This is not a model. This can only happen when you are writing these things down, measuring it on a day-to-day basis, and telling your team to be conscious. And it is important for the teams to know about it that, hey, once a marketer loses a lead, this is what he or she has contributed to the loss. Not their mistake. It's okay for them to make mistakes, but they should be aware of the fact that, hey, there has been an impact, right? Okay, just to talk about the definitions of, again, the GTM and the way it is understood, so that at least you don't twist yourself in a pretzel when you see many of these reports, etc., etc. One is GTM is also associated with one product launch, right? I think, so let's say we are launching an AI-driven kite, right? I know what that is, but it still is. Let us assume that it is a product. So everything that I do to fly that kite is going to be GTM, right? Now, if I move from a kite to a drone, it might be a GTM for drone, right? Now, put together, it can still be a function. It can still be a department. So remember that different companies have their own way of defining it. It is essentially a process to go to the market, but that process can be associated with this and the other. Another thing to be cognizant of is sometimes GTM is taken as a subset of marketing, right? Or a byproduct of marketing, or an adjacent function to marketing, which obviously is, right? Remember that none of them standalone make any sense. You are selling, which means that you have to create awareness. Awareness is being created by marketing. And if marketing cannot create awareness for anything, it is directed towards a specific product or a service. And hence they are tied at the hip across the board. But you should just be aware of it. Different companies look at it this way. But this should be your takeaway from that definition to this. Okay. This is just a series of emojis, okay? And it might be one of those bad jokes. But tell me what this means. Somebody unmute and tell me what this means. Can you just convert this in English? Or do you need an LLM for this? Yeah, go anybody.
When
Hey,
shit hits the fan, you have to start running.
Oh, yes, 100%. Who was that? Was it?
Yeah, I'm Rohit.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Okay, so I mean, I've tortured you enough. So when shit hits the, I mean, your GTM process is a simple process that when shit hits the fan, you are able to invent different strategies, approaches, etc., to get your business running back on track, right? Extremely simple, nothing difficult. But the important thing is you should be able to invent approaches, create approaches, learn from the first principles, bring it back to say, hey, I tweaked this and something else changes, which means these things will have to be built into the way you've thought about it. right? If this ICP is not working, this is it. We spent a whole lot of time and effort in creating IDFC Bank as our partner. We were aspiring to be one of the first neo banks, and we were almost there. But you know what the problem with IDFC Bank was? They were tech first, right? They were all virtual. But then the customers wanted to go to a branch. They said, if my check bounces and I want to kill somebody, where do I go to? I need to go to a branch. So no matter what you do, we will never take a banking account from you. And so we had to find another partner, right? And shit did hit the fan because we had spent a lot of money and time and effort in getting a bank to agree to certain things, which is very, very difficult, right? And so on and so forth. So yeah, you get the hang of it, right? Now, before we get into the GTM, I mean, you've seen the definitions, etc. But again, just a quick recap of, not a recap, but underscoring of what you need to know. Again, these are intertwined. So some of these things are under marketing, some of them are sales, etc., etc. But they are super critical. How well do you know your ICP? You know what ICP is, right? It's ideal customer profile, persona, call whatever, right? But it's important for you to define it to as much of in as much as details as possible. So let's say for us earlier it was business owners, which means partners, directors, etc. When we were doing small businesses. For us, it also was later on became a CFO, but it's not just a CFO, but a CFO of a new age company. CFO. So if we went to the CFO of, let's say, a coal manufacturing, a coal mining company, will not make a whole lot of sense because their systems are old. Will they adopt us or not, etc., etc.? It'll become very expensive for us to acquire them. So which means that you would have to continue to say which companies. You ran an experiment, did not work out. Where do you go to? How do you figure out adjacencies? What is his designation? Is this only a CFO? Who else is making those decisions? Well, for us, it became a CFO, a finance controller, a credit controller, who was in such and such company's revenue size is this much. They are in Sec A and Sec B cities, and so on and so forth, right? And they are into these industries or sub-industries. It became that much more detailed so that we were able to craft messaging and positioning according to all of them. But it is supremely important that we are able to get to it. Okay. Now, how do you articulate value proposition? It's great to know about it, right? It's great that even, let's say, even when I was working for SaaS, if somebody told me, hey, tell me about SaaS, 30 seconds. Would I stumble or will I be able to prattle it out because it was there in my DNA? The chances are that SaaS has 240 products, right? What the hell am I going to talk to him about? He just met me and he said that, now tell me more about it. And I'm not, yes, it is called an elevator pitch. And yes, we are all prepared for it. We have all heard of it, etc. But when push comes to shove, I can guarantee you that a tweet length definition of your company is near impossible to get, no matter how confident you are. But that's still just what your company does. It does different things to different people. Right? If I go to a user and if I say the wrong things for numbers, they considered that, hey, this guy, if he implements it, I'll lose my job. So if I don't go to the CFO, there's a problem. If I go to the user, there is a problem. How do I solve it? Which means value proposition has to be supremely critical. The way people come to your website, and I love to say this, is that your website is your salesperson who never asks for a raise, right? And think about it. And how many of our websites do justice? Right? It's all jazzy and all that stuff. It's all okay. But the moment I see your, what is it called, above the fold thing, right? How many of us actually are able to understand what the company does like this? It's difficult. Depends on who comes, who you are getting them to, which means that should they be moving to some other landing page? And that's only on the website. But when they're meeting you, when they're meeting your salespeople, anybody else, right? So value proposition, what is the pain? What's your medicine? Why should they not continue to use whatever that they are used to? Whatever is your competition, right? All of these are something that super critical. You should already be aware of it. This is what is being used in GTM. And how do you communicate it, right? Why should they bother? How do they compare it in terms of commercials? We ran a 9-month sales cycle with a very large automotive company, 9 months. And they did not buy it, right? And they were in Aurangabad, right? On the deal closure date, it was supposed to go to sign to the M. And I'm talking about a company which is like 7,000 crore in revenues, right? And we were charging them what, 6 lakh rupees, which at an aggregate would have been less than the chai of the cost of the chai that they drink, let's say in 2 days, right? But then the director, the owner of the company, he just said, hey, instead of taking this solution, etc., and we did a whole lot of song and dance with their CFO, CRO, everybody else, right? We integrated with SAP, all that stuff. He said, hey, I'll hire 2 accountants. 25,000, 50,000 kharcha karunga. Why should we invest in this? And we were out. And this was 9 months of efforts, right? It was because that status quo. Did we do a great job of not approaching him before? I don't know. Now I can say whatever, right? But obviously we could not win that account. But it's super critical, important. But then should you do it, or should one of your channel members could have done it? Should we have approached a reseller or anybody else, right? How should you take care of this? Should you go directly talk to these guys, or should there be an indirect channel sales, etc.? And obviously, if anybody thinks that that they are alone, that their idea is unique and nobody else is working on it, they must be on a very decent quality of pot that I would want to know. Right? You have to be smoking something up. Otherwise, this doesn't happen. Even though you have a patented idea, etc., doesn't matter, right? Somebody has already thought of it and they're working on it. They know, everybody knows. Bake that in. So again, these are hygiene, those things which are there wherever or whenever that you're operating. And hence, they have to be baked in when we create or think about any mnemonic or a framework, when we say, hey, these are the 5 things that I need in my GTM plan. The strategy that I create for my company, all of those are ingredients. And some of them will overlap with what I'm showing you. So you are essentially packaging and creating this product and taking it to the market. What do you need? Very, very basic stuff. And this should be our go-to framework that we should always think of, right? Whether it is a VC that you're trying to raise money from, or you're trying to fleece your parents into giving you money, right? The friends and family bit, or going and talking to angels, or if you are in a corporate setup where you are trying to get to the next big, some of these things will still be relevant, which is what's your offering, extremely be very, very clear about it. What's your value prop, and what's your positioning? To whom is important, right? Which is a market? Is that market growing? And who in that market should I be approaching? Which segment specifically should you be going to? Right? You are an edtech company and you're trying to sell to schools. Great. Which type of schools? Will they be ICSE schools? Will they have to have a fee structure which is slightly above a certain level? And who is actually your customer? Is it the parent? Because schools, who takes the decisions for children? Either a caregiver, which could be a parent or a teacher, or is that going to be the children who will make an ultimate decision? Toys can still be sold to children in somehow. But what about others? What type of toys? And so on. So I'm just trying to give you a thought process to say that how do you go to get deeper and deeper within defining your ICP itself? How should you approach them, right? How do you create your product visible? To whom? To the ICP. And if you're just doing a spraying and praying, yeah, it's a great idea. Your praying really work there, right? I mean, your stakeholders should then be praising your prayer rather than the product, right? Because that's what seems to be working there, which means that creating those visibility touch points is super critical, right? For us, later in the day, we were able to quantify to say, to get one sales qualified lead, we needed 23 touch points. Now, whether it is an email or LinkedIn or phone call, etc., all of it put together in decent efforts by creating rules everywhere, 23 touch points. Heard of this company called Wingify, right? One of the great guys. Parash Chopra is also a Gyan giver on Twitter. If you guys follow him, he's like Naval Ravikant of India. That doesn't live in India, but still. Again, some of those guys, they've been there in Mobi, right? Made boatloads of money everywhere that they're going. Chari, I don't know if you've heard Copilot, which is called Wingman. So Wingman is a tool that records the sales calls and all that. And Shruti made a truckload of money when Clary acquired them. But then all these guys were also instrumental in figuring out those touch points, and it was important, right? How should you sell them? When should you sell to them? When are they available? And how do you make sure that you're timing it right? And I'm not saying there is a right or wrong answer here, but just being conscious of it is important, which is similar to saying, hey, we'll not send out any social media posts on a Monday. We did not know that. Somebody had to tell us that. You should not send it out on a Sunday, or you should not send it, let's say, after 2 p.m. Right? Now, these are now famous. But then how do you figure this out? What about your guys? Does your product have such type of cyclicity? Does that have such type of eccentricities that you should be aware of? And some of those things, right? And finally, how should you offer? What should be your distribution channel? Should it be direct? Should it be indirect? Direct through whom? Would you need niche partners? Heard of this company called Reddington? Most of your cell phones would have come from them, right? From the BlackBerry days to now Apple's, iOS devices and etc. etc. High chances are that the people who service your phone or replace your screen and make you pay through your teeth is Reddington, right? But that's a channel for people like HP, or for most of the large consumer durables or large consumer facing products. Do you need to be a Reddington? Maybe that's a business model. But then do you need a channel partner? And that'll define. And hence, so what you see right now are the nuts and bolts of what should become an ingredient of your GTM strategy, the definitions, and then from that strategy comes the tactics. What are you going to do? How are you going to choose it? What's the rationale of choosing it, right?